make our nation great and strong, bold to defend forever the cause of freedom and of right. Fill our hearts with true humility, make us cherish fearless honesty, and help us to resist oppressors' rule with all our will and might forevermore. And help us to resist oppressors' rule with all our will and might forevermore.
At long last, the battle has ended. And thus, Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever.
Hello, it's the eve of Ghana's 56th independence, and I have been blessed with the amazing opportunity to be sat here with HE Professor Kweku Dansogwafo himself at the Ghanaian High Commission in London, and I have to let you know we are in for a treat today. I just can't say any more, we just have to have this conversation. Thank you so much, sir, for blessing us with the opportunity. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic.
What has independence come to mean for you as an individual?
Well, 1957, 6th of March, I think I was turning 7, not quite 7. I was in primary school, 3rd grade. Most of us had no idea what independence meant. We had been told that we were going to be independent from British colonial rule, and whatever that meant, I don't think there were that many 7-year-olds in Ghana who really understood what independence meant. I do remember that on that day we were given plastic cups with the Queen's, with Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's photograph on it. And I do remember that my cup had number 7. All the cups were numbered. It had number 7 on it, and the number 7 was quite significant because around that time the UK had a football player, Sir Stanley Matthews, who wore number 7 jersey. He had come to the Gold Coast at the time to play, and everybody was excited about his number 7 jersey. He was at that time the world's best footballer. So the fact that my cup was number 7 meant something. And either I was, the cup was signifying the relevance of Sir Stanley Matthews, or it was signifying something else. But the fact that it was 7 was very significant. To us, in Tree, independence meant free from colonial rule, free from European rule, and we felt that once Europeans left, all our problems would be solved. Educational systems were going to be expanded, healthcare was going to be expanded, food was going to be plentiful, and the areas where we were forbidden from going. In my hometown, for instance, Chebi, we had places called Obrodi Krom, the European town, where most of us were prevented from going. There were signs out there saying stay out of this area. There were dogs out there. There were all kinds of British guards. So from that time on, we were told that we could go there. They had a lot of apples, oranges, name it, all kinds of fruits that we were quite interested in, but were forbidden from entering those areas. So to us, literary independence meant freedom to go and take as much of these oranges as possible because they were our property. We really did not envisage the kinds of problems that we would be facing after independence. But Ghana's independence is closely linked with the activities of our first president, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And he articulated the purpose and objectives of independence. But because we're so young, we really didn't quite understand it. I did not understand these things until maybe I got to the university. And at the university, I really came to appreciate what Nkrumah meant. Because as you know, in 1945, he was here in the UK. He had participated in the Manchester Conference on Pan-Africanism. He had articulated the objectives of Pan-Africanism, and he felt that in order to really embark on the cause of Pan-Africanism, to ultimately accomplish the objectives of a united Africa, we have to be independent. We have to free ourselves from colonial rule. So he had published one of his first books, The Struggle for Colonial Freedom. And in there, he had articulated why and how we needed to be independent. So once he got back to Ghana in 1947, began organizing towards the self-government. And if you remember that, there was a huge debate between him and the other groups, the intelligentsia, who were arguing for self-government in the shortest possible time, as opposed to self-government now. So in 1949, when he formed the Convention People's Party, started speeding up the process of attaining self-government, the nation got excited. But the culmination of it was on the 6th of March 1957, when he made several significant statements, sent a message to the world that, one, we were seeking independence because as a people, we had a right to manage or mismanage our own affairs.
From now on, there is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that, after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. We are going to demonstrate to the world, to the other nations, young as we are, that we are prepared to lay our own foundation. We are going to see that we create our own African personality and identity. And we again rededicate ourselves not only in the struggle to emancipate other territories in Africa.
The world did not pay that much attention to it. He also proceeded to say, to declare, that at that particular time, we needed to stop behaving like a colonial people. We needed to embark on a cause of changing our personality into what he described as the African personality, a proud Africans who were going to build the first free country, as Marcus Garvey had wanted to do but could not succeed. So he was very proud to tell the world that today this former colony of Britain, referred to as the Gold Coast, was free forever. But he did not stop there. He went ahead to proclaim,
our independence is meaningless unless it links up the total liberation of the African continent.
That Ghana's independence was not just for Ghanaians, and it wasn't an end in itself. It was a means to an end. And that end was the total liberation of the African continent. And that's how he summed it, that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. He did not just say it and leave it there, as some politicians would do. He said it, he lived it, he operationalized it, he put it into practice by supporting the liberation movements on the continent. You remember that the following year, in 1958, he had called a Pan-African Congress in Ghana, and had, at the end of the year, initially he started with governments inviting the independent states of Africa for a meeting in Accra. And towards the end of the year, I think it was December, he invited the peoples. He made a distinction between governments and peoples of Africa. He invited the peoples, where all the leaders of the liberation movements at the time, MPLA, ANC, Frelimo, to come to Ghana to dialogue and chart a course for the total liberation of Africa. And you see, he also went further to devote a huge chunk of Ghana's resources, both human, material, and financial, to assisting the liberation movements on the continent at the time. Those liberation movements that were fighting Portuguese colonial rule in Mozambique, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde, also fighting the illegal minority regime in Rhodesia headed by Ian Smith, and also paid a lot of attention to assisting the African National Congress Nelson Mandela, to a large extent, Malawi at the time, Dr. Hastings Kamuzu Banda and others were invited to come and live in Ghana. So there was hardly any liberator or a leader of a liberation movement who did not live in Ghana or who did not hold a Ghanaian passport, because at that particular time, these individuals were not allowed to hold they were outcasts. They had been declared illegal in their own country. Joshua Nkomo, Robert Mugabe, and as you know, Mugabe even ended up marrying a Ghanaian. So he opened the doors of Ghana to the former colonial territories of Africa. You remember that in 1958, when Guinea declared independence of France, Nkrumah lent Guinea about 10 million pounds, followed by Mali under President Modibo Keita. He went ahead and again lent Mali a similar amount of money after the French had removed just about everything they brought to those countries. So that was the practicalization of Nkrumah's liberation ideology in Ghana, so in the rest of Africa. So to a large extent, he saw Ghana as a platform. Ghana had become independent. That objective had been accomplished. Now we needed to extend it, because he felt that Ghana, with a population of just about 4 million people, with a territorial size not to him big enough to be economically viable, had to be incorporated into a larger African government, a continental African government, because he felt that the progressive countries at the time, the countries that had become viable, the countries that were doing very well economically, the United States, the Soviet Union, had the size and the population to match with it. They had clout in the international system. So he really felt that Africa needed to match that by coming together. Based on our historical side, the historical experiences, we had experienced slavery, we had been colonized, and we continue to be exploited. But one of the things that we learned from Kwame Nkrumah is that whatever he thought, he translated it into writing, and he translated from writing into practice. So by 1963-64, he had worked on this document, Africa Must Unite, where he had made the political, social, and economic arguments for united African government. And from that time on, by 1965, he had also seen the pitfalls of independence, that this flag independence, this national anthem independence, this national pledge independence wasn't enough. You had driven the colonialists out of the political door, and they were coming back through the economic window. And he coined the term neocolonialism. And that also culminated in his publication of a book, Neocolonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism, which created a lot of problems for the United States, for instance. That you remember that around that time when he decided to embark on a trip to Hanoi and had asked President Johnson to suspend bombing and whatever, President Johnson's response was that they could not guarantee his safety and security. And it was mainly because the United States had opposed to the publication and the release of Neocolonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism. So in a nutshell, that was how our independence was attained. It wasn't just for Ghanaians, it was for the entire African race. And when Kwame Nkrumah talked about African race, he wasn't just referring to the parochial Africans on the African continent. He extended it to our brothers and sisters in the diaspora.